Hello learners, welcome back to my NetXP channel. We are into the F5 IP DNS 302 complete study videos, and so far we have covered the basics of DNS with lab. We have covered the TMOS understanding of F5 IP DNS. We have covered the DNS architecture and core concepts of F5 IP DNS, and now we are into the Chapter 4 implementation IP DNS lab video learners. And in the previous lab, we have covered the basic and core design of F5 IP DNS. So this video is going to be the interesting one, learners. Don't miss this. We are trying to implement DNSExpress in this lab. And just a recap of what DNSExpress is. DNSExpress is like an acting of high-speed authoritative secondary DNS server facilitated by the DNS engine, DNSExpress engine of F5. So the big IP DNS, it can either answer the DNS queries for a DNS zone, or it can respond for the zone transfer request. So we will configure the two scenarios. We will try to load the zone using the DNSExpress, and also we will try to answer the query using DNSExpress. All right, learners. So before we move ahead, I would request you all to like, subscribe the channel, the video, and provide your valuable feedback so that will help me to add more content. All right. All right. So let's begin without wasting any further time. So learner, this is my lab. This is my lab setup for the DNSExpress. I have a name server, authoritative name server, where my test5.com zone is loaded. And I will be using DNSExpress in my data center 1 F5 DNS, and the client would try to query the DNSExpress of F5 DNS DC1, and my F5 DNS DC2 would be the DNSExpress client. Okay. All right, give me a minute. Let's begin the lab. Okay, so in the block diagram, let's see how it works. Okay, as I said, the name server NS1 will be hosting the testf5.com zone, and the A records that will be hosted in the zone are this. We will enable DNSExpress on the IP DNS data center 1. We will make it a DNSExpress master, and F5 DNS DC2 would be DNSExpress client, and the LDNS was the one that would be issuing the DNS queries to the DNS master. So we will simulate two scenarios here, learners. So the first would be the client LDNS of the APAC region. It will try to give a DNS query for this testf5.com A records. The DNSExpress would handle the DNS query and return back to the APAC LDNS. So the main reason why we're using DNSExpress is it can handle the DNS queries more efficiently, more quickly, and more securely than your authoritative bind DNS server. So that can be an exam question as well, learners. So make sure that we understand why DNSExpress is needed: more efficient, more faster, and more reliable and secure. These are the three reasons why we need DNSExpress. So from the client perspective, when it tries to query DC1, LO1, testf5.com, the A record is being retrieved or handled by the DNSExpress. Okay, let's go on, learners. All right, so this setup is in my EVNG lab, learners. So let's log into the F5 DNS DC1, where we are configuring the DNSExpress master. Okay, so let me log in the DC1 first. So as you can see, it's only the listeners are configured in this DNS box, learners, nothing else. There are no wide IPs, no zones, no zones but the zone runner. Okay. So what's needed actually to configure? Let's write down the steps, learners. Okay. So all right. So configuration steps. We already covered this in the big IP DNS concepts, chapter 3. So these are the 4 things that we need to configure. We are just trying to ignore this transaction signatures for now, learner, because my bind DNS authoritative name server is not capable of handling the transaction signatures. If I enable the transaction signature here, the zone transfer may fail. So for that reason, I'm disabling this for now, but this is one of the steps. If your bind DNS server is capable of handling the transaction signatures, you can enable that. So for now, it's very simple. You just need to configure those 3 steps, create a name server object, configure DNS server, and create a DNS zone. All right, let's begin with. So the first thing I will try to create is, I'll try to create a DNS server, learner. So let me try to create a name server first. My name server is 70.1.1.3. All right, so I'll create a name server. I'll type it DNS master. I'll give it DNS master name. Address is 70.1.1.3, and I'll click on finished. Okay. So learners, I think we have already went through the IP schema for this. So the name server and the LDNS sits in the same VLAN 70 segment. My self IP of DNS is 71.1.5 and name server IP is 71.1.3. All right. So I've created the DNS master here. Now the next thing what I need to create is I will go to the zones and I will try to create the zone test f5.com. So I have this test f5.com already pre-configured on this name server. So I'll just try to recreate the zone. I just need to name the zone exactly how it is. Okay. Before that, learner, let's do a quick check. There is a command called DNSExdump. Okay. So if you give this command DNSExdump, it will basically reveal what records have been transferred via the zone transfer, and it will also reveal if the zone transfer was successful or not. So for now, as of now, we have not enabled zone transfer, so we can't see any records here. But as a post configuration check, we will use this command. Okay. So let's try. I will go to zones, and again, learner, I think I clarified in our last lab session. We will configure the DNSExpress in this zone section, not in the zone runner. If you want to create via zone runner, that would be your local bind records. So here I'll try to create zones. I'll go to DNS zones, and here I'll try to create zone. And as I said, I need to name the zone exactly as it appears in the name server. So in my name server, the zone name was testf5.com. So I'm going to give testf5.com here. DNS master is the server, which I've already created there. I will leave the other things by default. The notify action, I need to add my name server here to notify. So notify action is something, learner, I think I already informed you. So once the zone transfer is completed, if there is any further updation on the zone file, the authoritative name server will notify the F5 DNS. So for that reason, you need to add this authoritative name server in your notify action allowed list so that the notifications can be accepted. And once the notification is sent, it will request for a zone transfer, and zone transfer is fulfilled. All right. Let me check if I already covered this, but okay. But before we to, I think, let me explain the DNSExpress again, learners. So the moment you create the zone, it initiates a zone transfer request from the DNSExpress to the authoritative name server, and the authoritative name server responds with the zone transfer, and the DNSExpress loads the zone. So the moment you create the zone, I'm expecting my DNSExpress to send a zone transfer request, and DNS server, authoritative name server, would fulfill the zone transfer request. Okay, so let's see. All right, so I click on finish. Okay, my thing is completed. Okay, so this is a good sign, learner. So if you see here, you need to make sure that you always see the successful AXFR. It means a complete zone transfer has been successful. So now let's verify learners if the zones have been really transferred to, if the zone file has been really copied to my F5 DNS. So if I give this command DNSX there you go, learners. So you can see that all of these A records 11.1.1.5, 12.1.1.5, 13.1.1.5, 14.1.5.0, 12.1.1.1.0.1. So all these A records has been copied into my F5 DNS. So my F5 DNS is now ready to answer for this particular zone. But will it work like this? No, learner, never. You need to now create a listener. You need now create a listener that that tries to copy the configuration of DNSExpress. Okay, so learner, what I did here is I will not use this 71.1.5, the self IP. 71.1.5 is my self IP actually. I will not use this IP for DNSExpress. Rather than, I would prefer to create a new listener, but before that, I will also create a DNSExpress profile learner. So I'll go to delivery, profiles, DNS. This is the default DNS profile learner, but I need to create one more profile for DNSExpress. All right. So I'm creating a new DNS profile called DNSExpress. I will customize it. And within the customization, I will say DNSSEC. I will disable it because my LDNS is not capable of DNSSEC. So it tries to query the F5 DNS. The DNS query may fail. Okay. For that reason, I'm disabling the DNSSEC, GSLB enabled, DNSExpress enabled, cache is disabled. Remaining all is default. Okay, I'll disable the bind server learners. So what it essentially does is it will not redirect the non-wide IP DNS queries to the local bind. So if it is enabled, the default action is the non-wide IP DNS queries would be redirected to the local bind. That's not desirable because our DNS queries are still very much in our authoritative name server. It's not the local bind is not doing the A records, right? So the A record modification creation is still being handled by the authoritative name server. For that reason, I'm going to disable it. And zone transfer I need to enable because we have another task of DNSExpress zone transfer request. So I need to enable this zone transfer. I'm disabling the DNS security for now. I don't want this. Logging is not needed at this point. So I click on finished. So I created a profile learner. I created a DNS profile specifically for this DNSExpress. Okay. Now I need to create a listener learner. As I said, I cannot use 71.1.5, which is my self IP. I would be creating one more listener here. Okay, I'll give the name of the listener as DNSExpress TCP. So whenever you create listener, you create both TCP and UDP learner, right? I think We already know that fact. And IP I will give is 71.110. Okay, I will allow it on all traffic on all VLAN for now. Protocol is TCP, and here okay, here I need to select the DNSExpress. All right, learners, so we need to understand the reason why we are creating new listener. First, we want to use a different IP that's not the self IP, and second, we want to use the different DNS profile from the default DNS. So we want to use the DNSExpress profile for this listener. Right, so I will leave others as default, click on finish. Similarly, I need to create for UDP as well. DNSExpress UDP address 71.110. That's UDP. DNS profile is DNSExpress. Click on finished. Alright, learner. So now we have our DNSExpress listener ready. So will this work now? It will work if my LDNS is giving a query to 71.110, the DNSExpress listener learner. So let's check if we are ready to work here. So let me log into my LDNS. Okay, I'll just try to flush the DNS. Okay, let me check one if I can still resolve it later in my LDNS. Okay, before that, let's see. This is my client VPC learner. The client VPC points to this LDNS for all the DNS queries. And let's see, okay. If I give a ping. Okay, there you go, learner. So my DNSExpress is working. And let me go to the LDNS, see. Give a dig command, dig dc1 hello1 dot test f5.com at 70.1.1.10. There you go, learner. So my DNS is working. As you can see, the answer section. So perfect. Okay, learner. So let's see if we can see any stats of the DNSExpress in our F5. Okay. So I'll go to zones. And if I go to statistics, okay, good. So you can see I already see two queries, learners. So whatever query I made, DNS query, I can see that in the stats. I can see the increment as 2. In this is a very useful view, learner, in the real scenario, and also for exam point of view. If someone asks, how do you validate if the DNSExpress is working, you can just go to the stats. You can check for DNS zones, and you can see the queries are happening. You can see the responses are happening. You can even see the serial number. So this has to match if there is some issue with the communication between the authoritative name server and your F5 DNS. And more importantly, what you can check is the resource records list, learner. So the resource records should match with your authoritative name server. For example, I have 8A records here. So here all the 8A records should be matching here from the authoritative name server. All right, learner. So we are done with the first scenario, client DNS query handling. We saw the moment we configured DNSExpress on this box, and it tried to copy the entire zone, and it tried to respond to the LDNS query. Now the second part would be a little bit interesting, learner, wherein the zone transfer would be done from the DNSExpress master to the DNSExpress client. My DNSExpress client is my F5 DNS data center 2. So let's do the configuration here, learner. So here, if I log into my F5 DNS in data center 2, so currently the only configuration it has is the self IP. It's having a self IP of 1881.15. So as I said, I would not be using this self IP for DNSExpress. I would be creating other self IP. And if I go to listeners, it has a default listener configured on 81.15. Okay, so let's try to create one more listener learner. So I'll create 80 DNSExpress listener. Okay, TCP, I'll give it as 80.1.1.10. Okay, I think it not created DNSExpress profile, so first need to create a DNSExpress profile. Okay, it's already there, learner. So I think I might have created in my previous lab. So I have the DNSExpress profile already created in the F5 DNS data center 2. And as you can see, it has DNSSEC enabled, bind server and big IP disabled, and zone transfer enabled, DNS security disabled. Perfect. Okay. So let's now create the listeners for DNSExpress. Okay. Create DNSExpress underscore TCP. And as I said, I would be giving it 81.110. Select TCP, DNSExpress, finished. Similarly, DNS Express UDP 81.110. Need to memorize this IP. I'll tell you later why this IP need to be memorized. It's needed in our allowed entry for the IP DNS and data center 1 learners. So you need to memorize this IP. I'm making it a UDP protocol, DNS profile, this DNSExpress. I click on finished. Alright, learners, so in our F5 IP DNS data center 2, we are done with the creating of listeners. We're done with creating of DNSExpress profile. Okay, so let's try to create the zones now. I'll create the zone. But before that, I think I need to create the name server as well, learner, right? So let me create the name server here, learner. So, all right, learner. So what do you think would be the DNS master or the name server for the IP DNS 2? Okay, let's open this picture. So we are configuring it as DNS Express client, learner. So for this, I will not configure NS1 as its name server. For this particular thing, the name server would be my DC1 DNSExpress, that is F5 DNS data center 1. So I will configure 71.110 as the name server here. All right, click on finished. Okay. Now let's create the zones. Okay. Test5.com as it is. Server would be DNS master. 10. I will add DNSExpress IP of the F5 IP DNS data center 1. And click on finished. Let's see if some magic happens. Okay. So the zone transfer has failed. So this is a good troubleshooting thing. So we have not done with the configuration, I guess, learners. So let's check what else need to be done here, learners. Okay. Let's log into the DNSExpress master, and here see a zone. It's working fine. There's no issue with this. Okay. I think we discussed this earlier, right, learner? So we need to allow transfer from DNS1 to DNS2. So let's configure the allow transfer, okay, on the DNS1 F5 box. And how do you do that? You go to zones, zone runner. Using zone runner, you change or modify the named configuration learner. So if you see, I need to check where I allowed it. It's failing. The zone transfer is failing. Okay. Okay, but before that, let's check the network connectivity as well. Did I create a default route? Okay, I already created a default route. Okay. Options, recursion, no. Allow update, allow transfer. Okay, there you go. So here, let's try to add .1.1.10. I will allow the client, I will allow transfer to this DNSExpress client on my DNSExpress master. So let's see if this happens now or it will take some time. I'm not sure. Okay. Let's reload the zone actually. How you reload the zone? ZRD. I guess this is the command. ZRD reload is your zone transfer reload. So let's check again. Okay, still showing the zone transfer is failed. I'm allowing 81.1 for allow transfer. Okay. Okay, let's check what's there in the DNS2 learner. Let's see. Let's check the name configuration here. And if I go okay, so somewhere let's troubleshoot here. Okay, I think okay, let me log into the CLI of this box learner on the DNS2. Let's do the DNSX dump. Okay, nothing is received actually. Okay, let's see where we done wrong here. So it's 81.1.10. I'm allowing that and allow transfer. So it's doing a zone transfer to this box. Now oh, well, I think I got it. It's a very basic learner. So I'll tell you what happened. We configured the zone here, but we failed to configure zone transfer client in our master DNSExpress server. All right. Okay, so let's try to see if it's configured as server here. First, let's see. In the data center 2, already configured DNS master server. So now in data center 1, in the F5 DNS, I need to go to name server and I will create a DNSExpress client. Okay, let's do that. DNSExpress client, and I will give the DNSExpress IP listener IP there, 80.1.1.10. Click on finished. Now I'll go to zones again. So here I need to add this DNSExpress client in the zone transfer client. All right, Len, I think it's a good troubleshooting step. So we did the live troubleshooting in this video. So if some zone transfer is not working between the master and the client, you can just try to validate this. So I'm now adding the DNSExpress client as the zone transfer client. I'm updating the zone, and I'll do a zone reload as well. Let me quickly do a zone reload. So ZRD and the reload is the zone reload command learner. So let's see if this will fix our zones learner. So if I'll go to zone here, still it's getting failed. Wait, it may take a while. Okay, still it's getting failed. But again, let's see. Hold on a sec. 71.110. Let me see if the IP is reachable. Network should be checked always first. To reach the IP here. What about there? 80.1.1.10. Okay, it's reachable. Okay. And now the client is still not working. Let's try to understand. So DNS master, state enable, consume, also notify, allow notify, verify notify. Okay, it's all default. And if I go here, name server is the client and the master. Okay, let's troubleshoot further here. Let's see if something we can find at GTM level. Root domain support selected, TMM ready. Okay, here cat var log GTM. Why the AXFR is okay. Did I make anything? Test5.com. Let's try to hold on a sec. Let's try to recreate the zone learner again. Yeah, DNS master client I have mentioned. Okay, probably 71.110 is already there. I'm maybe using, okay, let me check learner. Name server, I have to, just try to modify the IP address of the DNS master, but again, it's learning on both TCP and UDP, so zone transfer should works on TCP port 53 of the port. Okay, it should work. Okay, let's do one thing, learner. Let's just try to delete and recreate it. Okay, I'm deleting the zone. Okay, I'm again creating, this is on the client DNSExpress F5 box. Naming the zone as F5.com and to the DNS master web. State is enabled. Okay. Click on finish. Okay, something is missing, learners. Let me check the zone configuration here. Also include 8115 as well. And the allow transfers, they will allow 81.110, 81.1.5. Okay, now I wanted to it's a general both. Still okay, learners, so I think I will do some backend troubleshooting and I will continue with this scenario in my next video, learners. So far we are done with the client handling DNS query, so the part 1 is done. I will do cover part 2 in my next video. Thank you so much, learners, for watching this video. See you soon in the next part. Thank you. Have a nice day.